Oh, that's what he just said.
All right, you're ready.
All righty, good evening. Welcome to the May 10th, 2022 Newmarket Planning Board meeting. Let's start by doing the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Next on the agenda is public comments. Anybody out in the audience have any comments on something that is not on the agenda? Hearing none, I will close the public comments at 7:03. Item 3 is review and approval of the minutes of 4/12.
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. I will abstain. You all set over there? Excellent. All righty. Next, on the regular business, is Eric DeWitt, a public hearing for an application for design review and extension of conditional approval of 12/13/2018. Design review involves a 2-lot subdivision. One lot containing the approved future 2,920 square foot mixed-use building would be .07 acres with 220 feet road frontage, and the other lot would be 4.52 acres with 451 feet of road frontage. The lots are located at 81 Exeter Road, tax map U3, lot 37 in the B1 zone. Good evening.
Great.
Please introduce yourself for the board.
My name's Eric DeWitt. I'm the property owner at 81 Exeter Road.
Excellent.
Is the extension request is actually for the final site plan approval I received in June of 2020. I satisfied all the conditions at that point.
Oh, right.
So I can give you a little background on the project.
Please do.
So I had...
Hold on one second. Hold on one second.
The original was approved in 12/13/18, and then you had an extension in 2020, correct?
No, I satisfied all the conditions for the final site plan approval in June of 2020.
I think it
And
took.
it-
Correct.
Yep.
So there was granted the extension.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Eric.
Okay. So yeah, I received the site plan approval in June of 2020, and that was really when the pandemic started to sink in, and proceeding with construction at that point was impossible. The lumber racks were empty and everything was shutting down. And the person who I had, who was going to rent and open the restaurant space, disappeared as all restaurants started to close down and things started to shift. So that really wasn't going to work, so I put the project on hold. The following year, the pandemic persisted. We had variants, and that wasn't going to work either, but at that time I engaged with a couple advisors from the SBA and really started to work into a path forward that would work. And obviously the pandemic went on again, and I ultimately came to the conclusion that I needed to bring on somebody else to move this forward. It was a little bit outside of my comfort zone, and really opening a restaurant myself was really going to distract from my goal of opening my own business in half of the space of the ground floor. However, I did continue to work on the property, clear the field. In 2021, I planted a cover crop as part of the approved site plan. And this spring, I did demolish the fencing around the little house, which was on the demolition plan, and I transplanted the forsythia and hydrangea as part of the landscaping plan. There's currently a dumpster right now on the property as I clean up some of the debris. So I am requesting the extension because I found a party who is interested in moving forward with the approved site plan. And that would really free me up to have funding to build the barn in the back for my own business.
Okay, thank you. I'll open up to board members. Any board members have questions? There's two things at work here. One is the extension and the other is subdivision / site plan.
So, relative to subdivision, how will so what I'm hearing is the request for subdivision is to maintain all of the approved site plan on one lot?
Correct.
All the calculations that were done under the original approval were for the entire acreage, correct?
No, just for the northeast corner. So this was really the approved site plan. None of this was looked at the time.
Well, that would have been included in the stormwater.
Well, there's a stream right here, so
Yeah.
I don't think we even looked at this back part in the TRC. It was really contained within this part.
Bart, could you check on that?
I think,
Sure.
yeah, we'll want to review that.
Technically, they're supposed to do the whole lot. I'd be surprised if they
right.
didn't do the whole lot. but-
Unless we gave them a waiver.
I'll
I don't
review
remember
the
that.
I don't either.
stormwater report.
I mean, certainly the major impact is on that corner, but
Sure, but
you gotta-
usually typically it's the whole lot.
That's all set.
Right.
right,
I could be
pre
mistaken.
and post.
Uh,
Okay, yep.
And so your original plan was you were gonna occupy half of this building in the northeast corner? Is that,
Correct, of the ground floor.
okay, and then, so that building is still proposed as is? And
Mhm.
you're adding in the additional 40 by 60 barn in the
Correct.
back at this point?
On
And
a-
what's the,
On a separate lot.
or it'd be this barn, right?
Yes.
But your proposal is to subdivide and have that on a separate lot, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you see the dash blue
That's what
lines,
that, okay, yeah.
that's-
So it would be subdividing this lot off, and then the new 40 by 60 barn would be the remainder.
correct.
The remainder, approximately 3/4 of that lot
Correct, yeah.
would be that, okay.
Yep.
And what's the purpose of that? What's the business purpose of that gonna be, did you say?
So I'm a designer, and I make things with local materials, reclaimed materials.
Mhm.
So it'd be primarily a wood shop.
Okay.
But I still would like to, use this part of the land to grow things.
Okay.
So I think that one of the questions I have is obviously the stormwater, because I would believe that the whole site was analyzed for stormwater, and if, which would be typical. And if that is no longer part of the site plan analysis, it may not be the same outcome as far as stormwater management structures and whatnot. It may be better, it may be worse, I don't know at this point. But then we'd have to take care of stormwater on the other lot, obviously with the new site plan review.
So you don't see the topographical, it's not superimposed on this, but
Right.
Basically the land goes down to about 44 feet here, and then it rises back up on this side.
Right.
So it ends up getting up to like 56 feet. But my proposal is for a permeable parking lot. I'd like to use the same system that we talked about for the front lot.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but there's, in my mind, there's two things, is, One is if you were to subdivide this lot, your engineer would need to confirm that it still works from a stormwater management perspective to meet the regulations. And then obviously you'd have to do a new site plan submittal for the second lot,
Right.
right? That's the plan. So, I mean, if that's the process, I'm okay with that, but I can't sit here tonight and tell you that it's okay to subdivide that lot without knowing the answer to some of the site plan design, mainly stormwater, that was done for that first lot, the bigger parcel. I remember who you had do that? Bedford Design Group?
Ekman Engineering.
Oh, that Ekman stepped in. Did you have Bedford first?
Yes.
Then Ekman stepped in?
Does the addition of the driveway coming out of the back of the parking lot and crossing the wetland, does that change the site plan for the lot up front?
Yeah, it does.
So you'd have to do a new site plan for both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because that's
Right.
additional impact on that
On that
parcel.
lot.
On that parcel, exactly.
Is that proposed to be a bridge or culvert or?
So there's an existing bridge there,
Right.
and the proposal is to remove it and replace it with a culvert.
Is the existing bridge passable by car? By vehicle?
No, it's passable by tractor. So I have a tractor that's 2,000 pounds and it drives over it. But it's only 5 feet wide.
Yeah, because on this, it looks like a pedestrian bridge.
Yeah,
if
that's
you
why I
will.
asked, because
Yeah.
it's just because of the scale.
Looks
Oh,
different.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so you'd have to do all new calculations anyway, because the blue line is the proposed subdivision line. And then you're adding improvements onto that site plan.
Right. Have to amend, at a minimum, be an
Amendment
amendment to
to
the
the
approved
site
site
plan.
plan.
Maybe fill up wetlands, right, if it's gonna be a culvert.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that would have to
Yeah.
all be,
Go back before the Conservation Commission again, I would think too, right?
oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and especially, and then also here because of, special
The
special use
filling.
permits for the impacts to the buffers.
In the fill.
Right, and the fill, right, exactly. I mean, obviously there's a process you have to go through to get to here.
Right. And subsequent to submitting the plan that you all are looking at, in conversations with the party who wants to buy it, we actually relocated the subdivision line so that the culvert would be on the parcel that I would own, because it really doesn't make sense for them to own a culvert that goes to a property that I own. So the line actually moved here and out a little bit.
So it comes closer to the back of the parking lot.
Pretty much right at the edge of what was approved, so that all of the new impact wouldn't be on the approved site plan. It would be on the new site plan.
Right. Yeah, and it may, unfortunately though, it may have impacts on the existing site plan, depending on the grading of the bridge or the culvert. If it's,
And the traffic.
if it's pitched back towards this lot, obviously stormwater would have to be addressed. Well, and the traffic, and obviously there'd have to be an easement
Right.
through there. So, I mean, to me, on the face of it, I don't have a problem with what you're trying to do, but it's a process you gotta go through, which is basically redesigning it, checking the design on the existing site to make sure it still works, and then designing the new site. I actually like the idea of, even though in this case there's no alternative, the one access point out onto Route 108 is good. I'm sure the DOT will like that, even though they're gonna make you go through the process of re-permitting it. Anybody else have any, that's my thoughts on it,
Right, when you're also trying to get, use of the land behind, which
Correct.
is high.
Correct.
What do you, in regards to the extension, so what do you, what are your next steps there?
So the site plan approval is for 2 years, and there's a mechanism in there to ask for an extension.
Right, so what would you be, what's kind of your time period to finish this out, or you just
Well, my hope is.
Just keep this active in
um,
case the subdivision
Correct.
isn't approved.
I'd like a year extension, but this party, they would like to close on November 3rd. So, you know, I would like to get the subdivision done and this part done while I work on a site plan approval for the back. So whatever I need to do to get them going and move on while I work on this. I don't think this is nearly as complicated as the front. We really worked on this for, I think, just 2.5 years. And this is much simpler, I think. So that's really my hope.
Well, I mean, it would seem to me that you have to design the back and see what, if any, impacts that has on the front, right? So they can be addressed with a modification, as part of a modification. Hopefully the stormwater isn't worse, and hopefully, I mean, I know that back piece is high, so any culvert you have there is gotta probably be pitching back towards the front.
So if you recall this parking lot, the grading of it, in order to create enough airspace volume
Yep.
and not to make the pitch so much that somebody's car door is closed. So we did add, I can't remember, 2, 3, or 4 feet to what's there. So it is higher on the approved site plan.
So it's higher than the back?
It would be similar.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if the
Maybe.
water drains back this way, you have to take care of that in the stormwater. That's all I'm just saying, and how it works out is up to you, I guess, to figure out, but from my perspective, that would be the process, is design the back, see what the impacts are to the front, and with the new lot lines, you've got to reanalyze the front to make sure that it still meets the stormwater regulations.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, yeah, and particularly because, so now if you're saying then the flow is coming back
no,
towards the parking lot?
no, he's not saying it
You're saying
is.
it's going off,
Yeah, he's saying this is higher, so it may not be coming back this way.
okay. Because again, we approved this as a pervious,
Correct.
you know, but based upon the calculations for
Correct.
what was coming onto the parking lot.
Correct.
So we had simultaneous approvals for the permeable and if you see this shaded area, it's remained undeveloped because the alternative drainage was to put a retention pond there.
Yep.
But I wanted to avoid that because really I'm trying to do this as a green development.
Yep.
And having asphalt there, and then also not being able to use behind the building when that was really intended to be outdoor dining.
Yep.
Wasn't something I favored, but we put it in there in case.
Yep,
Right.
absolutely. And I remember we had a lot of discussion about the permeable paving
Mhm.
and whatnot, so.
If it
So-
worked, didn't work.
I mean, the idea of it doesn't bother me at all, it's just
Mhm.
getting through the process. And unless you have an engineer lined up and they're cooking, having final stuff by November is gonna be difficult. Cause we're almost into June. When would you think you would make a full site plan submittal?
Soon, yeah. I think the first step is to, as I recall, meet the minimum requirements to get the conditional approval. And then I have to meet all the conditions to get final.
No, right, I get that, but what I'm saying is that you're gonna have one, possibly two, you're gonna have at least one new site plan and probably an amended site plan for the front. Maybe not, if everything works out and it doesn't change, maybe not. You've gotta get those approvals, right? And I would think that whoever is gonna buy this front piece isn't gonna close on it till you have those two approvals in hand. And what I'm
Mhm.
saying is that, November will be here before we know it. I think it's gonna be difficult to get all that approved by November, unless you're gonna submit in the next 4 or 6 weeks, and maybe you are, I don't know. So, but the time frame is, you know, that's, you're in control of that, right? You gotta make your submittals and whatnot. So, I mean, I don't know, I'll let anybody else speak. Does anybody have any concerns about the idea of doing this?
I just had one question for you.
Sure.
To limit it to not having to submit a whole new site plan for the front,
Yep.
what needs to happen? Just maintaining the lot area and not having any new improvements on it? Is that
No,
any
my
new improvements, like new proposed improvements?
right. My opinion is that and I'm just throwing this out there, is that was approved, and the majority of the discussion was relative to stormwater, right? So if his engineer looks at that and says that with these proposed improvements on this other lot, and with changing the lot lines on this, which now becomes a different lot, the stormwater remains the same, and there's nothing else on that lot, then a letter from their engineer saying, or a stormwater report saying, we've rerun the numbers and nothing's changed, to me, that's fine. He may not need a whole new submittal. That's my opinion, but it'd be up to their engineer, or his engineer, to
Or
let us know.
maybe look at it as a different way. I mean, he has a buyer for this section, and you have an applicant coming before us that wants to do basically a subdivision. What we want to confirm is on this, you know, is on the lot, the lot that has the existing site plan, that will, if we do grant the subdivision, forget about anything on the back lot. If we do grant the subdivision, the condition is that, that all the stormwater management works on here. Otherwise, he's, you know, doing an amended site plan for the front. And look at it from the perspective of, now he has a landowner that just has this back land with nothing going on, and 3 years later he comes before us. Then I think we would be dealing with everything relative to what's going on the back land. Right?
Possibly.
As a new site plan. It
Yeah.
could very well be that it becomes, he can't access it because he can't get the wetlands crossing, you know, where the building gets sited because of the stormwater, you know, management issues that might be involved here. But it's really as a separate, you know, application. I think we keep, because it's being presented that way, you know, at this point in time, that I think we're looking at this as an entirety as to how it affects the front.
Right, I think we have to.
Does it pass through traffic
Well,
force you to?
Yeah, because of the right of way, right?
Yeah, but that's all just gonna be an issue on the development of the back lot, not the subdivision of the front lot.
No, right, but
Right.
My concern is that just changing the lot lines may force this approval to be out of compliance with our regulations. May cause it to be.
Yes, I think that's what we need.
That's what I wanna check
we
on.
need to
Yes,
verify.
yes. But I think they'd be crazy to do that and not look at how this impacts that, because this is only question one, and you need to satisfy both questions to make it not have to submit a new site plan for this. You have to guarantee to us that this does not negatively impact the stormwater on this parcel.
I think that occurs when he's coming before us for a site plan for the back lot. I'll call it the back lot, even though it has frontage, so it'd be conforming.
I agree with that, but that gets very complicated if he doesn't own this lot.
Oh, I understand that, but
Yeah.
that's not the board's issue.
Oh, no, I agree with that. I agree with
That's,
that.
that's the landowner's issue.
Well, right, but also, would you be willing to go forward with subdividing and selling off that corner lot if you then are left with the back lot that would potentially, if you didn't know without getting the site plan approved before, you would be, potentially have a back lot that you could do nothing with. So I think from a risk standpoint, it would be, I would imagine it's better from your standpoint to know that the site plan is
Oh,
approved for both
absolutely.
lots before going forward, right?
Oh, I agree with that completely. I mean,
Yeah.
that's certainly his
Right.
decision.
I mean, I'll certainly ask that question.
Right.
This is there's much more land back here, much more usable land. I mean, I've farmed it last year and
Yep.
it's drains well. I don't see it not being able to support a building. But it's a good point. And then on the easement, that document, my lawyer would draw up as part of the subdivision. We've already talked about, you know,
Sure.
we need underground conduit for electricity, all that kind of stuff.
Yep. Yeah, sewage, everything.
which
That's-
would
that's
all
fine.
be on this revised site plan.
Right.
So the way I look at it is you'd apply for the extension, plan board grants the extension. Have it set up in your purchase and sales agreement that you're going through subdivision review. Meanwhile, you go through the subdivision review process you have to seek approval, contingent, and then also, so and also at the same time, making sure stormwater works on both sites. And then also, there might be an opportunity here, say the stormwater doesn't work, would the board be amenable for an easement agreement between both lots? Where the stormwater would be, work.
We allow
work
that as
together,
long as,
yeah.
as long as the stormwater works, I don't really care where it is.
If they
Cross
subdivide,
easements, I agree,
Yeah.
I agree.
yeah,
Just to be clear, no one on this board is giving you any advice as to legal options that you have,
Yeah, I'm
or
just saying, if
or
I were to-
suggesting that.
yeah.
I understand.
Just
Right.
for the record.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I think what you're hearing, I don't think anybody has an objection to this, you just need to show that it meets our regulations.
Okay, so to summarize, and I'll reach out to you, Bart, and thanks for that conversation a few weeks ago, it was very helpful. I need a letter from the engineer, and the calculation on the stormwater is, what I'm hearing is the most important thing. And then, if it all works out where the line is, this subdivision and sale could move forward, and then I can work with you on the site plan for the back.
Almost. You have the right items there, but, I mean, quite honestly, as far as I'm concerned, if you wanna do the subdivision, you can do the subdivision, but if it doesn't meet the stormwater, it's gonna be a problem later on.
Yep.
You know, so I think the prudent way to do it is that way, but, I'll just leave it at that, I think the prudent way to do it is that way.
Yep, yeah.
Anybody else have any comments, questions,
I guess
concerns?
my only other comment would be that if you're coming in with a subdivision plan, that in relative to retaining the approvals for, it would be an amended site plan. Okay,
Right.
so therefore, we'd also want to ensure obviously all of the setbacks work and everything. That would be showing on the amended site plan. So there will be an amended site plan.
Regardless, they're coming back.
Right.
Both lots are coming back.
Yeah.
So the question is, can they start development?
Right.
If he were to sell.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so what about the extension? I don't have a problem giving a 6-month or a 1-year extension. To give them time to try to get this going and figure it out.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with that either, especially given the conditions.
Yeah,
You met the conditions and the conditions of the rest of the world that have imposed upon you, so I don't see a problem with that.
I think that,
Yeah.
what's everybody thinking?
I agree with that. I feel like because of the situation, that seems fair to give that extension.
I would agree. Yeah.
And this one, the extension we need to vote on tonight, right?
Yeah, I would, that
Yeah.
needs to be.
Because you're gonna run out of time.
Exactly.
Um,
6 months or a year?
A year's fine.
Year.
Yeah. Everybody okay with the year? So I think with that, I'll entertain a motion to grant an extension for a year.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Say nay. Ayes have it. Thank you.
Great, thank
Good
you very
luck.
much.
Thanks. All right. Second on the agenda, Maplewood and Vaughn Holdings LLC, request for extension of vesting beyond the April 10, 2023 ending date to allow more time to negotiate and finalize a sale with buyer, possibly revise the design of the building, order steel, etc. The requested extension is for 2 years until April 10th, 2025. Hello.
Hello, everybody.
You haven't been here in a while.
How time flies. How are
Please
you?
introduce yourself for the,
Rob Graham from Maplewood and Vaughn.
nice to see you
And
again,
Dave
Rob.
Libby, Jones and Beach Engineers.
Excellent.
Sorry, I'll just set this right over here.
Sure.
Did we start this in 2018?
Yes.
I think we approved this project originally in 2018. And it's been a bumpy ride for the last few years. But we've powered through. A little bit of an update for the board. We have completed all of the excavation export for the site. And we've completed the site. This is actually an update plan that we're going to provide to the planning office. We owe you this update for our progress plan, and so we'll provide that electronically for you. But both of these 2 industrial lots on Forbes Road, and they are essentially a subgrade, would you say?
Yeah.
Subgrade. And the construction drainage is in. All of it mirrors the finished drainage. Our slope constructions are all in. We are really, from a site plan standpoint, ready to deliver a site to a tenant or to a buyer, and that's really why we're here tonight. We are, I think, under our approval, we have met our standard for active and substantial development, which brought us forward. I think we have another year on that. The issue we're having right now is going forward is pretty difficult out there to get construction done. We've got both a tenant involved on our lot 7, which is the lower lot, and lot 6, which is the lot up on the corner. This is an active buyer. This is a prospective tenant who is actually a Newmarket business today. So today, if we ordered steel for one of those buildings, that would take us probably, they guaranteed that steel for 18 months, which is just outside of our approval process. So we're really just here as a, looking for a facilitation to help us get through the rest of this development. So we're asking the board to extend, oh bless you, our time after active and substantial out for an additional 2 years.
Yep, absolutely. Do any board members have any questions? Concerns?
It looks great, Rob. I've been out there. I think the concern I've had over the past, few weeks, months now is the landscaping along 108.
Mm-hmm.
Not looking like it is proposed on the site plan.
Mm-hmm.
So
That is all true.
2 questions.
Yeah, we've just been.
When can we get that cleaned up? How can it continue to stay? It's a nice gateway into town, as you know.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so we just come into spring. We have got some of the plantings that are up here. They need to be replaced. We planted these. We knew we'd have to replace some of them. We planted them early. We don't have irrigation up there, so we had some that died off, which we intend to replace here, going forward here. A lot of these plantings here, some of these are an extension. This is like where that guardrail section is. I'm not sure if you're aware. And so there are other plantings that have to be done in here, but really they're going to be done when the building construction goes in. They really need irrigation. That's really what's going to have to happen there. But we've restabilized all these slopes here. We do owe some plantings up in here, and that's all scheduled here for this spring.
Very good.
And then you'll continue to maintain those.
Yes.
And so the lot on the corner, we'll sell that lot?
Yes, that's what we intend to do right now. This is it's actually a local property owner in town who wants to relocate up in here with their warehouse and their operation.
And then they'll be responsible for the maintenance along 108, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then you'll retain ownership of the other lot, the interior?
This lot here, yes.
All right, and then you'll continue to maintain that.
That's right.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions, concerns, comments?
So this may not be directly applicable, but just, and I haven't been involved with this, being fairly new to the board, but the retention of the grade along 108 there, it seems like just in passing by on 108 that's really close. Is that, I mean, obviously that's been factored into the engineering of it, right? Is that?
Oh, sure,
there's
yes.
no.
There's all approved design slopes with DOT. This is we actually ended up, this took us a long time.
Mm-hmm.
The DOT actually worked through that design.
Okay.
That's how they wanted that.
Yeah.
DOT drove that design for us.
Yeah, you did an analysis of the soils and soil size and,
Yeah.
yep,
Yeah.
I remember that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I personally have no issues granting an extension. Do we wanna get a motion? Do we wanna comment on the landscaping?
I think it's in the record. I think code enforcement, if you're not gonna
Okay.
maintain this, you'll be hearing from
It's
them.
fully our responsibility, and you got my phone number.
We'll
so.
stick the dogs on you. All right.
Yeah.
If there's no questions or other comments, I'll entertain a motion for a 2-year extension.
Well, I just have a general question that's probably, again, because of my lack of knowledge, but, so, obviously this is somewhat dictated by economic conditions that make it hard to acquire the materials to build these things. What happens if in 2 years we're in the same place? Does it just, is there any end to the number of extensions someone can get?
Plan board can
I don't
decide.
think there is.
Until, well, other than how they get vested.
Yeah.
The issue is getting vested, and I think, and one of our conditions on vesting was substantial completion of the building, so we tied the vesting of this plan into the actual construction of the building. So if that doesn't happen, and the planning board, or even tonight, if we don't, agree to grant the extension, they've gotta complete those buildings. I don't have the I don't know if it was substantial completion or completion.
It was a lengthy
Good.
conversation.
Yeah,
So-
but if they fail to do that, then they has to come back that approval period expires, they're back before the board under all the regulations in effect at that time, at the time in the future,
Right, so.
starting from scratch.
Exactly, so not necessarily the site plan expires, is that they would be in, basically grandfathered for the rules at the time. So
Right.
that's extending, this is what the board is extending, is those, rules and regulations zoning that was approval. So,
Okay.
they're in the 5-year, there's 2 vesting periods, there's 5-year, then in perpetuity. We're extending the 5-year period.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And there's no obligation for us to extend anything. If in 2 years from now, there's a different board here and they don't wanna extend it, that's their business.
Right.
I hope they'd have a good reason not to, but I mean,
Yeah,
that's
something
the truth.
drastically changed in zoning.
Well, I was
Yeah,
gonna
no,
say,
it's-
has there been any change to the zoning
No.
in that period? Right?
No.
There hasn't, so.
There's been
There should be no-
conversations, I think gateway areas, but I think that's outside it.
That's outside of the
Yeah.
Southern Gateway, yeah, yes.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Does anybody have any other questions? I'll entertain a motion for a 2-year extension.
I'll make another motion.
Motion's made, is there a second?
I'll second again.
Motion's made and seconded, any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Nice
Thank you
to see
very much. Great to see you, although briefly. We'll keep on working. Thank you.
I don't wanna see you here again in 2 years.
Yeah.
We wanna see the
Yeah,
buildings
we wanna
going
see the
up.
buildings.
You people.
We wanna see the tax revenues.
Yeah, we're working on it.
All right.
It's actually going pretty well. We've got really good interest right now, but people are very
Good.
hot on Newmarket, and Newmarket's a pretty desirable place, so it's been going pretty well over here.
Excellent, good, good luck. All right, next on the agenda is pursuant to RSA 675-7, the planning board shall hold a discussion and set a public hearing to amend both the site plan and subdivision regulations of the town of Newmarket, intending to modify section 3.03 stormwater management of Appendix A, subdivision in section 3.07 stormwater management of Appendix B, site plan review, or take any other action relative thereto. So, let me open up the discussion. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at it, but also Bill Archeri, who wrote the majority of this, is in the audience. Well, you can come on up here, Bill. But where we are with this now is, since Bart has been here, he has tweaked what we were working on, which is, rather than have a separate subdivision and site plan section for stormwater, I think the intent is now to have a section, just a stormwater section that incorporates both into one. I think it's a good idea. Obviously, I think it shows more of an importance in stormwater because it's its own section. And I think it's clearer. Somebody doing work in town can look in one section and get all the information they need. In theory, you could do a subdivision and a site plan review, and you have to thumb through 2 sections to see what sections are pertinent to your development. This draft, let me ask, did everybody get the draft? I know, Bart, did you send it out?
Yeah,
This
email,
morning?
yeah,
Email,
I
okay,
sent
all right,
2.
all right. So I don't expect to sit here and say everybody's had a chance to look at this, so my thoughts on this is, if people have looked at it and have questions or comments, we can go through them tonight. If not, I think this is in good enough shape to just schedule a public hearing for our next meeting to start getting some public input so that we can get towards the goal line of approving these new regulations. Has everybody here heard Bill speak relative to the changes? That's- Yeah, that's what I was gonna get to is, so, I know we've got some new members and stuff. Bill, do you mind giving us a quick, history with the MS4 and all that, please?
Sure. How far you want me to go back?
Not very far, believe me.
Yeah, so my name is Bill Archerry. I am a stormwater specialist with VHB Engineering. I'm a resident in town. He's my next door neighbor. That's just happened to me. I've served on the planning board years back. Been a resident in town for a long time. So my profession is in stormwater, and I've helped other communities update the regulations. The MS4 permit, which is an EPA permit, municipal small storm, separate storm sewer systems, was passed in 2017, became effective in 2018. There was a subcommittee that started updating these regs 2018, 2019. Things went on hold. The MS4 was actually revised a bit. So this sat, and then sat through COVID, and then it was picked up just this past fall. Diane approached me about updating, getting this to the finish line. So we made some changes, as you can see in this draft. We did some formatting, some added clarity. We had a subcommittee with the planning board members, and made it consistent with MS4. There really isn't all that much change in terms of the requirements. A lot of this, in terms of the treatment requirements, was already in your existing regulations. The only major change is the disturbance threshold. We now have a smaller disturbance threshold where you've included 2,500 square feet of disturbance within 100 feet of a surface water body would have to meet the minimum requirements. It's basically the only change.
There's a question on that too. Is it that just be peak flow or volume or both?
Peak flow rate. There is a provision to calculate the volume,
But just peak flow.
but the requirement is to meet pre-development.
Yeah, that's what I
peak
meant. Yeah.
rate.
Right, the total volume can go up, the peak flow can't go up.
Of
Yeah.
existing, pre-existing.
From pre-existing,
Yeah.
correct.
There is also a groundwater recharge requirement in there as well,
Right.
which is consistent with the alteration of terrain regulations the state has. And all of these are consistent with the alteration of terrain requirements as well.
It just brings the threshold down.
Right.
What's alteration of terrain threshold currently?
100,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Or
So-
50,000
50,
square feet.
Yeah, so this triggers it at 25 and 2,500. Correct.
20,000.
20,000,
5,000,
5,000,
I think
and 2,500.
Impervious.
Yeah.
And just so you know, the MS4 permit really only triggered these enhanced treatment for 40,000 square feet of disturbance. But you already had it in your stormwater regs at 20,000 square feet of disturbance. You already had it, and most communities are going with 20,000 and sometimes even less. So there was no reason to go to 40,000 square feet.
Thank you, Bill. So does anybody have any questions for Bill? I assume that, I know everybody's busy, probably haven't had a chance to read through these, but do you think it's, I'm comfortable enough to say that we should put this on the agenda for the June public hearing, have a public hearing on it, get some public input so we can keep the ball moving forward. And that'll give everybody a chance to look at it and come at the next meeting prepared with questions you may have. And at that meeting, Bill, are you gonna be able to attend that meeting?
Yeah, what's the date?
I
June,
think it's 7.
Yeah, that should work.
No.
7, no?
can't be June
It is.
Is it?
Oh, wait, no, it's
gotta be the
14th.
14th.
It's the second Tuesday.
Second Tuesday, right, the 7th can't be the second
Yeah.
Tuesday.
Flag Day.
If you could make it, that would be good, because I think maybe at that meeting, depending on who's here from the public, we may get more in-depth questions that you can answer better than we can.
Okay, yep,
Does that make sense?
yep.
Do we
So-
need to, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so the simplest way to look at it is these two are no longer valid, it's only this appendix C.
Correct.
Well, yeah, I think it's more what is the board comfortable with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Do
the
you want-
idea-
Do you wanna add in both in
Right.
duplicate or
Right.
in one spot?
The idea of this is you strike everything from subdivision and site plan, say reference C,
Yes.
and then C is the control line for both.
Correct.
And I mean, if everybody doesn't like it that way, we can keep it the way it is. I think it's cleaner to have it in one,
I would agree.
but that's my preference.
And that
I
was some
don't-
comments from other board members who aren't on the board anymore.
Yeah, I agree.
Was that the
100%.
suggestion that came out of the original committee that we worked on in 18 and 19? Because I was working on that.
Simplification?
Yeah, to simplify it. I believe that was part of that work, wasn't it,
Yes.
Bill? Is that right?
It was, but I don't know if we ever really got there. Because it got complicated with all the, at that time, the MS4 was, I don't know, we maybe made it more complicated than it needed to be, but
Yeah.
it, you know, we still had the site plan and we had the subdivision and we were kind of duplicating and we never seemed to get there to put it into one.
But you have no objections with it being as an appendix?
No, it seems to make sense.
I think it carries more weight having it as its own standalone. People understand that it's important, not just one of a gazillion subdivision or site plan regulations.
Well, it's also easy to amend in the future as we start going through this.
Yeah, doing both, that's correct.
Right.
Right. Yeah, and the way I look at this is, you know, we have, to me, this is a good plan, and just say this gets approved this way, and a year from now, we get 3 applications where people need waivers, and they need waivers for the same thing. Maybe it gives us the wherewithal to look at it and say, maybe, you know, we don't know all the consequences of this, and maybe there's something there that we need to tweak one way or the other. We have the ability to do it. And it's easier if we can do it just in one spot than to look through all these other documents.
Yeah,
So,
It's an iterative process.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Bill. If
Yeah.
nobody has any other questions,
I don't know, anybody else any que-
I think I'll take a vote to, make a motion to put this on for public hearing at our next meeting, which is June 14th,
7 p.m.
7 p.m.
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's made and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All those
Aye.
opposed say nay. Motion passes. Thank you again for your patience, Bill.
Very
Sorry to make you
good
sit here
see
for
you
all the
with
time
Bill.
for that. Oh, yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
All righty. Thank you all for that. Moving on. So I also was remiss, and I shouldn't be welcoming Bart.
You weren't here last time.
I wasn't here last time, so I know.
You just wanted it on
I missed the
record.
cake. I missed the cake.
I'll take
Um,
it, thank you.
So, on the chairman's report, I think there's an opportunity to talk about what our goals and objectives are and priorities. So I'm just going to throw out a few things and maybe just have a little bit of discussion of what people think. We don't need to certainly make any decisions tonight. And there's obviously some things that I won't have on this list, but I think it's a good place to start. Always on the list is, you know, updating parts of the master plan, and I think we put away, what, $10,000 a
$10,000
year
a year.
in the budget to help with that. North Main Street, with the infrastructure having been done up there, the water and whatnot, do we look at tweaking the zoning up there? What we have now just, for whatever reason, doesn't seem to work. Since there's been nothing done up there. ADUs, do we look at ADUs, which has been talked about. I think everybody probably knows a few years ago, quite a few years ago now, the planning board, we started going down that road, and the council wasn't so supportive. I think the council is different now, so I certainly think that's worth investigating, and with what's going on with the prices of everything, I think it's probably time for us to really
Just the new
come up with
is
something.
Attached ADUs.
Well, we can,
I mean, ADUs are already in the plan, I mean, we can already have an attached ADU.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, but it's, even though our regulations still say with permission of the ZBA, which
Okay.
we don't, which, as I think Val said, isn't,
I think it'd be good to review and make sure they're consistent with the RSA.
right. And then I don't know, the last thing I have on the list is the Historical Commission, and that reminds me to bring up, Scott, thank you for sending that around, but it should go to Bart.
Well, it came from Bert, the one I sent you was from Bert.
Oh, well, but you shouldn't be sending it to all members. You can't send something to all the members. I think it's a violation of the open meeting law.
Technically a quorum,
It's a
quorum
quorum.
thing.
So, not a big deal, but just,
Oh, I thought as long as nobody responded to it, that was okay.
Yeah,
that's news
That's
to
how
me.
the council treats it. I mean,
Oh.
the council, I can send everybody
Okay.
in the council an email.
Okay.
But
Oh,
if they
okay.
hit respond, then it's a meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Conservation did the same way, because we didn't have someone to send out emails for us.
Yeah,
Oh,
as long
okay.
as nobody replied, but you can't have a conversation over those emails. Like, you can send something out, especially, if, important notice, but you can't have a conversation about it through email. That's
Okay.
my understanding.
Okay,
That's
that's
how it-
that's
that's
news to
how
me.
it's ran in the
Okay,
council. Yeah.
I stand corrected then. Thank you for sending that out
Okay.
then. I withdraw my,
Well, that could bring up your fifth rule, our rules of procedure.
right, which I have here is, do we want to talk about updating our rules and procedures? And then I'll open it up. Does anybody have anything else that they feel may want to be onto this list? I think, knowing how busy everybody is and whatnot, I think this is more than enough
Big
to
list, yeah.
to chew into. I mean, I personally would prefer to do the ADUs first, Main Street second, master plan third, and we need to talk about the historical, that letter.
Does anyone know that we have rules of procedure? Has anyone seen them?
That's what I was gonna ask.
I have.
Yeah.
How about in your next packet, you all have it?
I think,
'Cause I need to review it
they're
too.
20
Yeah.
years old.
Yeah.
Where do they live?
Exactly.
I don't know, to be honest with you.
We'll go into the catacombs.
Are I know that we discussed some zoning items that were supposed to be part of a workshop that never materialized because we didn't have enough people for the workshop. So,
In regards to housing, the
Yeah.
extension of M2A up to North Main Street.
right, and
Yep.
some stuff to do with downtown and to move some items into planning.
Mhm.
There's special use. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I know we reviewed them and discussed them briefly.
And we had talked about really getting, well, Stratford's doing, well, as part of the state, they're doing the housing inventory.
Yeah, I can speak upon that. I think as part of our master plan efforts to update it, there was some, what I've gathered, willingness to look at that plan and update it. But right now, the regional planning commissions across the state are doing a regional housing assessment, and that analysis won't come out till fall. So I think it makes best sense to wait for that report, and then next year.
Well, to what level of detail are they going?
It's pretty fine detail, I believe. So
Like-
it's going to include census data as well, that isn't out yet.
Will there be a chart of all our tax parcels? And then,
Again, I'm not sure
acreage.
how fine that fine will be, but I think it makes sense to have that as a reference guide as we update the master plan as a more a rational basis on what decisions the planning board is going to make.
so I think where we were heading, Jeff, was really to get a handle on Newmarket there's always been the discussion, we have enough multifamily, we don't need workforce housing, we have enough affordable housing, there's been all those discussions in the past. What do we really have here in town, because we really don't have a solid inventory in, accessible to the planning board. And then to also look at rezoning potentially different, residential areas of town, looking at density. But without knowing what we have, because there's really no solid database for that.
Yeah,
It's hard, and I think we were heading down that road at one point.
okay, because I know there were some sections that we had amended portions, and that we reviewed and discussed that were supposed to be part of the stormwater workshop.
For housing?
It had to do with like setbacks in the downtown area and
Right.
and whatnot.
That was getting into, yeah.
Maybe it was more
More,
infrastructure.
and we were talking about lot coverages.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't have it in front of me once I do. I wasn't planning on bringing it up, but I just didn't know if that was a discussion that we wanted to continue because it was going to be part of a workshop. That's the only reason I pointed it out.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem discussing something like that.
But
That's what we
I didn't
wanna
want
do. Do you wanna, I guess now that you can, you wanna send it to everybody?
Sure.
Because I honestly don't recall the details on that.
I think, if master plan is one of the priorities, what I would like to have the board discuss maybe at the next meeting is what sections to update.
Absolutely. So, is everybody, and I guess I'll throw this out there, maybe nobody's in agreement with me, but as far as order of things we want to address, do we want to look at the detached ADU stuff first?
Well, I think we owe a response to the council.
Yeah, I think the council thinks you would respond, yeah, and it's something that we've already started, right? Well, I don't know how far we got before.
In regard to ADUs, or?
Well, we already have an
I thought
ordinance.
Val and
Okay.
Diane had already started that, no?
Yeah, there was a rough draft as far as amendments.
And what specifically were we looking at? Was it about the detached ADUs, about permitting those as opposed to what we don't permit those today, right?
Correct.
So that was the biggest change that we were looking at with ADUs. And was that restricted to a certain part of town, or was that going to be a blanket across the entire
Well,
town?
the town council was looking for a recommendation from the planning board.
Yeah,
So I think the
So-
idea is to pick that discussion back up.
okay.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think we made any decisions on that.
Okay.
I know Val had
And-
asked the question about, what's the impact, what do we have, how many properties it's gonna impact? I mean, because I think at this point, an ADU is obviously for a single-family house,
It is.
right? So it excludes a bunch of properties in town just for what they have on it,
Correct.
right?
But the discussion was getting more into this issue of lot coverages, parking, you're dealing with small lots, are you having it all become impervious surface on the lot? They're not subject to any stormwater regulations, because it doesn't come before us. And then, of course, there's the discussion of, do they still go to zoning board? Is that a requirement under the RSA? And we need to look at that. So there are parts within our ordinance to kind of revisit relative to RSA. And then the idea is the board gonna recommend to the council, should we allow for detached? So, modify the existing ordinance to allow for detached. And in any other recommendations we may make, particularly if you are allowing for detached, getting into this bigger picture of lot coverage and impervious surface, or maintaining a certain percentage, undeveloped area
Right.
of the lot.
Right, and do we have other requirements?
Correct.
Can you put a detached ADU in your front yard?
Yeah.
That type of stuff. The devil's always in the details. All right, I think.
So everyone has the zoning, and it's right online, everybody should look at the ADU.
Yeah, I can send the link to it.
And
just
can
so
you send a
everyone
link
has
to
it.
the RSA?
That would be great.
Yeah. So, do you have a copy of that draft?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so what I'll do is, the RSA, the zoning, ordinance link, one online, and then, I guess, is this a direction the board wants to go in now?
Well, anybody objecting to tackling that?
I think it's a good idea, and as far as I know, most communities around us already have that, so we're kind of detached. Yeah. So it's not that unusual actually around here.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Well, just for your information, Bart, so there had been in the past some issue with the council and the planning board not coordinating and the planning board doing a lot of work which ended up being not endorsed, right?
Okay.
So the council was interested in a detached ADU, and I brought that to the planning board, and the planning board said, well, you know, we'd really like to see something a little stronger. So the council actually unanimously passed a resolution asking the planning board to look at ADUs. So it was kind of a directive from the planning. So that would, the idea there is that, you know, the council would be ready to endorse the recommendation of them. I mean, obviously, they're not gonna, they can't just say, yeah, we're gonna endorse it, but
Sure.
I mean, it's.
Right. There's no guarantees.
Yeah.
But I was the one who brought that up before, because I'm sick of wasting time doing stuff that is summarily rejected. Because we got more important things to do.
So it sounds like there's momentum behind that.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Jeff, were you referring to the email, maybe saw that went to Bill? Because when I drafted to Diane, as far as the committee,
No, we discussed it. I have the notes from January 25th
Yeah,
regarding
so-
like waivers for certain things.
right, yeah,
They were, yeah,
they were like there were 5 items basically, 6 was on there.
yeah. I was just looking for it. I didn't know if it was part of an agenda, but I know I received an email along with the stormwater stuff prior to the.
Right, because that was the
when we were
idea,
gonna
the
have the
committee would be
workshop.
best to look at the above items, they could figure out how we wanna proceed, get the input, et cetera.
Yeah,
I don't think
just-
Diane ever did anything with it.
No, we discussed it at a
Yeah.
meeting.
No.
We were going to talk about when we had people potentially public at that workshop. And
Never
I'll,
went
I'll
anywhere.
send this to you.
never went anywhere
And I
after.
think as a side project of mine is I'm gonna go back at all the decisions, look at waivers requested, and see what the frequency is. And then we can at least have that on
You mean like, not the scale,
the
what's the
scale
other,
of the land.
Yeah.
what's the other
Um,
one?
Soils.
Soils.
You have sewer.
So just so the board has that in front of them, and you know, is that something, you know, when they have nothing to do, they can tackle that, and look at that, just so we have the, you know, information. So 2 ways to approach this, we want a subcommittee, and then to report back to the full board once there's recommendations from that, or you want the full board workshop it,
On.
ADUs.
I don't know. What's the? I'll keep my mouth shut. What's the?
We don't have a lot on
preference?
our plate, I would say let's just do it as a board, then everybody is
Yeah.
really,
That's what I was gonna say, but I
Yeah.
didn't wanna.
Sounds good to me.
Yep. Okay. All right. That's excellent. Any committee reports?
So the town council is getting a presentation on the adjustment of the impact fees. So the new plan for impact fees will be presented to the council, I guess, next week. There was, if you remember during COVID, the seniors got these little posters that they put up around, and those were, we didn't really have any regulations for that, but it was COVID, and, you know, so people were happy to do it. They've asked to do it again this year, and so what the council is, this is more just for information, is we're gonna allow it to happen again this year, but during this year, we're going to write regulations, and we're going to establish official poster things on light poles with very specific dimensions and everything, and so if you wanna do posters from then on, you have to fit into that standard.
Okay, the sign
on light
ordinance.
poles.
When you say
Sign ordinance.
We have a
amendment?
sign
Yeah,
ordinance.
Well, this is a postered sign ordinance.
This is for graduation pictures that have been going up on
Understood.
schools
banners.
downtown.
Well, now the new ordinance, though, will be for anybody that wants to do something.
So in the public right of way, putting these up.
Yeah,
So
kind
you're
of.
talking about the town-owned light poles?
Town-owned, yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah,
nothing
not
to do with our
Eversource.
sign
No,
ordinance.
No, it's not a
So-
sign, no.
Right.
Oh, okay.
It's a poster ordinance, I guess.
Do we know what town light
fancy ones.
You'll see them going up.
Okay.
Probably
Yeah.
in the next week,
Yeah.
couple weeks.
Yes, that's
There'll
true.
be pictures of all the graduating
Yeah.
seniors around, and they
Yeah,
put
or
them
you
up
can
on
see
the
them around
light
town.
posts.
That was a COVID thing, but it's kind of taking on a life of its own.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Of them putting them up.
Absolutely.
So, as you know, we voted to convert Neal Mill Road into a trail, and we have a public forum on this, so we're gonna have 2 readings, right? So we had the first reading in the last meeting. 2 people, well, 3 people came, two protesters and the chairman of the Conservation Commission. One of them was the chairman of the Snowmobile Club, and he was very much against converting it to a trail. And so the chairman of the Conservation Commission went over all the advantages that, for instance, you can fundraise on a trail, you can't fundraise on a road. You know, there's very simpler regulations, but he was very concerned that if you convert it to a trail, then it's somehow he's going to lose his right to go snowmobiling there.
What is he snowmobiling for a few hundred feet? Because all of a sudden, if you get into new fields, it's a trail.
Yeah, it's already a trail. in
It's already a
Newfield.
trail in new fields. It's just the Newmarket
So you
portion.
know Ellen Snyder, the new
Yeah.
chairman, yeah, so she went over this,
Yep.
like,
Yeah.
so it was a back and forth. He would get up and speak, she would get up and counter it, he would get up and counter her, and she got up and countered it. It was kind of, and then the other person just thought, well, the whole point of making it a trail was to prevent development, and since Selt now owns the land, they can't do development, so what's the point of making a trail? I'm just, so I guess we didn't expect to see that to be controversial.
Yeah. Did they not snowmobile on it for some reason? I thought you could still snowmobile.
You
on the
can
trail.
still snowmobile.
On a trail.
Yeah, so all the counters validated that the snowmobiling access should be maintained.
Yeah, we don't see any changes at all.
Yeah,
The only thing you literally can't do is drive on it, but you can't drive on it now anyway.
right.
Oh. Why do you say that?
You can.
It's gates and bars. You can drive on it.
Town can't.
I mean, it's not
maintain it.
practical.
Yeah.
No, I thought you could just open the gate and drive down there?
Yeah, it's subject to gates and bars.
Oh, right.
I think the sign
What does
officially
that mean,
says
subject
emergency
to
vehicles
cars?
only, but.
Yeah, but
that
it's a
doesn't-
class 6 road.
It's a class six
subject
road,
to
so-
gates and bars, so it's a public road.
Right, okay, so you can drive on it.
Yeah, but as soon as it goes to a class A trail,
You can't.
then it falls under the
Yeah.
trail
I
regulations.
mean, do they drive their snowmobiles up? I mean, you'd want to drive your snowmobile as a snowmobile, right? You wouldn't want a trailer driving back there.
Snowmobiles use that already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
so it's
snowmobile
snowmobile
use won't change at all.
Yeah.
It'll remain
Yeah.
the same.
So
Most
anyway-
people aren't accessing it from the Newmarket side anyway for snowmobiling. They're using other
True.
access points, so.
Yeah, so we're expecting another discussion in the second reading, but we'll see.
Can I ask you a question, Scott? Did,
Yeah.
did the town address the first portion leading up to Old Lee Road, or like how that would work? Because the landowners can still access their land via the Class A trail, right? So I guess maybe it doesn't matter. So it would just be a trail from the gate out where the gate currently sits, or did they say it's starting at Old Lee Road or
The
anything?
answer
like
is
that?
kind of embarrassing, Jeff. We have been asking, the town manager didn't want to do this until he talked to the attorney. We asked him to talk to the attorney for 6 months before he finally called the attorney. And we said, we're not gonna put any additional thing on here because it took us 6 months just to get Neal Mill Road. So, when this goes through, I think we're gonna ask the planning board or the conservation commission to then recommend that we take Old Mill Road.
But it was for the full length of the Class 6 portion of Neal Mill
Yeah.
anyway. Okay. Thank you.
And then we got this, let me just make sure I get it. So we have this letter from the Historical Society. The letter was read in the council, and the town manager suggested that it be handed to the planning board. So in the spirit of the ADU, I asked the town councilors, how interested they were in maintaining a historical town. there was only 3 in an opinion. One thought they were generically interested, and the other 2 thought that the new kitty place was super cute.
Is that what was pushing this?
Well, you would think it would. I don't know, I haven't talked to them, but I would think first we get this bright yellow chicken place, right? Which doesn't fit, right? And then we get this, you know, looks like an Old West saloon. I mean, it looked to me like this kitty place should have those swinging doors. It would be like you're in Tucson or something, right? So I don't think either one of those buildings would fit in historical reference.
Well, there's a historic overlay district, so I don't know if the.
Well, I would guess what that letter says is they would like to see
They want regulations.
such that you couldn't build like a kitty.
Which I don't support at all, but that's just my opinion.
Okay, so all I'm saying is there's.
We should talk about it.
I saw no support in
At the
town
council.
Yeah.
to create restrictions.
Hmm.
One counselor thought that historical societies have way too much power and they screw up communities by adding all these regulations.
I would say I do not disagree with that.
So I don't know what to do about this letter. I don't know what the planning board should do with the letter. All I can say is I didn't hear anybody in the town council who thought that.
Well, I would think if there is a vast majority, you know, supermajority, 75% of the landowners or property owners within the historic overlay district wanted to have regulations, then I would think that the planning board, that would be my opinion, that the planning board should really consider that. But I mean, you know, because that's who's being affected by the regulations, are those property owners.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think the answer is we don't need letters from the Historical Society. We need 300 people at this meeting saying we want it. And the Historical Society has to do a little more work than just write us a letter.
And more than 300 people, to me, it's more than 300 people. It has to be the landowners. Because I believe that you have a right to do what you want with your property. I don't want somebody telling me what color I can paint my house, what I need to do for windows and whatnot.
Yeah.
I may be a minority, but.
And alternatively, they can propose something too and go to the council.
No,
Well,
absolutely.
that's what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that happened, man, had to be more than 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
When I was on the council,
Early
because.
on. You were on the council, I was still on the board here, for sure.
Yeah, because there was a landowner downtown that was replacing a roof that some council members didn't like. And there was a historical, I think they actually went and got design guidelines and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And I think when I was on the council, I think the first or second meeting I was on, we rescinded those. Because it was a personal vendetta at that time. But.
Interesting enough about the Dipsy Tabby, person doing the contractor has actually taken reclaimed lumber from historical buildings that are being torn down in other communities and applying them onto the facade there and incorporating them. So some from like Kennebunkport, from Portsmouth. So
He's just not taking them from
yeah,
Newmarket,
no, but he's
downtown
bringing
buildings.
history to Newmarket.
Right.
So
But you could definitely film a Western in front of that.
you know, it's subjective. I agree.
Yeah.
All right.
I would be, I mean, the landowners that are pushing for it should have more of a longer vision though. Because I think that our historic district is a long vision. Not I own it today, it should be as it is as I own it today. I think it's more of a community long vision that we would like to preserve this portion of our community. I'm not saying I'm in support or against, because
But a lot of.
I mean, you go to downtown Boston, you see a building built in the 1700s next to a skyscraper, and if they didn't allow that, you wouldn't have Boston. So, I mean, so there's got to be a little bit of everything.
But also, a lot of the discussion was, within our historic overlay district, there is such a mixture of architectural styles, materials, eras that things have been built. So how do you really set up those regulations? Because there's no consistency within our district.
Right, I would agree.
You know, within that current overlay district.
I think if there's ever were to be regulation or design guidelines, I think important thing is how do you incorporate modern architecture and honor the past? instead of having a strict, this is how it was built then, because it's not only you're preserving the architect, you're preserving an idea as well. I think as everything, life changes. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you go to Boston, and that high-rise next to the old building, at the human level, it looks like an old building.
Sometimes.
Or it suggests it.
Sometimes.
Now,
Sometimes.
you know, the next floor up is all glass and steel, right? But right, literally at the street, they kind of match.
Right. Well, though, to close this out, if the council, if there's no support in the council to go this route, then I certainly don't want to waste our time talking
No.
about it. Been down this road before. I
That
mean,
was
we
it,
could always
yeah.
go through it and make a recommendation to the council, but if the consensus right now is to do nothing, then I don't think we need to do anything.
It would seem in light of the, you know, following the town council's lead.
Yeah, yeah.
Or in absence of any sort of grassroots approach by either the current owners or the historical community, at least coming to us and giving us more input than what we're getting today, which is one letter saying there should be something done. I mean, I'd be willing to listen if, like you said, there were business owners that were saying, you know, we think as business owners that it's in the best interest of us as a community to have something that preserves what we've got, that helps us have a thriving business community. I mean, I do think that people come here today and they aesthetically like the way the downtown looks and they feel good about walking around, being here, buying things. I do think that the historic atmosphere contributes to that. I don't think there's, I frequently hear when I tell people in the market, I love your downtown, it's so beautiful, I love what you've done with the old mill buildings. So it's not like we're not getting positive feedback about the restoration work that has occurred to maintain those buildings in a historic state. It hasn't benefited the town, it has. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But we did it absent of regulation, and that's great.
Right.
But I think to not acknowledge that at all is a mistake. That hasn't somehow contributed to where we are. Sorry.
But there's such a mishmash of buildings downtown.
But we have a historic overlay district, so I don't think we've ignored it. I'm just trying to find it here. Is it in our, is it
doesn't
is
really
it an
have any-
ordinance or is it in the regs?
It's just an overlay district, it doesn't really have any design standards or anything. It just
Right.
acknowledges that this is these parcels are within the overlay district.
And to be fair, I think that letter had numerous signatures on it, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of people. I don't know how many of them
Well,
are property owners or how many are,
There had to be 20 signatures.
yeah, at least I would say. But
Well, and their law, you know, I very much respect the people that signed that letter.
I
They've
agree.
given a lot to this town, and we have an exceptional historic, organization with the Historical Society.
Yep.
And a lot of, and they attract a lot of people into the town, and I agree with you. I mean, we have a very quaint town here.
Right.
I would hate to see it gentrified, because I think that, that is definitely happening in other communities.
Would it make sense to invite them to give a presentation to the planning board?
Well, I think it goes back to if the council, the last thing I want to do is waste people's time
Yeah.
here
Right.
if the council is not interested in even thinking of adopting any of changes to the ordinance, because we've been down that road
Zero interest.
before.
to me, there's no sense for us to talk about it. I will if people, obviously, if the board wants to make it a priority, then we will. But it seems nonsensical to spend time and then give it to the council that's gonna ignore it.
Yeah.
I guess I would agree on the subject, but I don't agree in principle. To have two elected bodies and one completely deferring to the other.
It's,
With-
we
with-
can only
no, I-
recommend ordinances.
No, I
We have
know.
no power to adopt them.
Right, but to not entertain at least the idea of citizenry coming forward and saying,
I don't think the the board was suggesting that. I think, they want to have that discussion, they always come to the public.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, present something.
Right, and then I would think that a member of the planning board would then attend a town council meeting and explain
Well,
reasoning
Well,
for
that's
for
our-
potentially moving forward, or,
Well, to me, then they should go to both boards, not to, convince the councils that it's worthwhile too. If that's up to them, I guess, that's not for us to talk about, so. And I'm fine with having them come in front of us and talk about what their thoughts are, but, yeah,
So
it is
what
what it is.
what I'm hearing is ADU, accessory dwelling units, concentrate on that.
Yep.
And, we can workshop that.
Well, and your second priority, that's the North Gateway, right? So that's the town priority as well, right?
Yeah. Zoning in that area, yeah.
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 'Cause isn't that what, I thought that's what we decided the North Gateway was the easiest one to,
Of the three, it is by far the easiest one, and, I mean, it's like.
Well, the concept is as we
Yes.
presented to the prior council,
Yes.
was the M2A district was not just the south corridor, it was also the north corridor.
Right.
They were the gateways into downtown, so they should kind of mirror each other.
yeah.
Right. And in theory, it's more straightforward than some of the other ones. And also, I mean, you look at it from a practical standpoint, nothing has been redeveloped up there. So to me, that tells me that there's a problem with the zoning.
Any new infrastructure there.
There's,
It's all new infrastructure,
Right.
new drainage, new water, new
water.
sewer lines,
No sidewalk, new
new
road.
right,
yeah.
new coast bus stop area.
We did have that one project talked about, but never went
No,
anywhere.
no.
But we're talking about the one lot that's up there, right? That's undeveloped, is that what
No,
you're?
we're talking about the
Oh,
whole
the whole
corridor
corridor.
from, so right now,
To the Durham line.
right now that the M1 district, well, actually, there's a little portion of M2A, which is kind of up Elm Street and behind.
Mhm.
We want to extend it from M1, which is basically the bridge, to the Durham town line.
Mhm.
So similar to have M2A, like that we have from the railroad tracks, up to the car wash. So
Okay.
that those two sections would have similar zoning.
Okay.
So they were both zoned B1, so it was just commercial development was allowed.
Mhm.
So with the M2A, you could do the mixed-use development if it had a commercial component. So it was the idea of trying to get development going, needing the residential for not, for housing supply, but also to make these projects, these commercial projects financially viable
Right.
for the developers.
Okay.
So, in that whole corridor up there, to have it all zone B1, where literally 95% of it is not commercial, just makes no sense.
It's all non-conforming, right? No
Yeah,
residential allowed?
95% of that
Yeah. Yeah.
area is non-conforming for use.
Alrighty. That was good discussion. Does anybody else? Scott, are you?
Yeah,
all done?
that's it.
Anybody else have anything, any other committee reports?
I'll say from conservation, had a good guest speaker last month, and this month, it's from New Hampshire Fish and Game. Josh McGazy's gonna come and speak about, turtles around us and their habitats, and there's a lot of, interesting, threatened and endangered turtles in Newmarket, so it'll be an interesting discussion, so tune in or join us, I guess.
At the last meeting too was the pollinators, I thought
Yeah.
that was interesting.
Yeah, the pollinator pathways was
Yeah.
a very good presentation. Yeah, definitely.
And we have a snap
I would watch
that
it.
comes out, lays eggs at the corner of our driveway every year.
I'm not sure they're endangered.
No, I know, but it comes out every year. Been doing it for 50 years. But,
You need to make committee appointments.
oh. Alrighty.
Maybe
I should
in the
probably
June
do it at the
meeting.
next meeting.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
think Jane is CIP still.
CIP, yeah.
See if she wants to,
Yep.
So
So everybody think about
may-
that between now and the next meeting, if you wanna volunteer, if you wanna stay on the committees you're on, whatnot.
Scott, can you follow up with, with Steve as to what's the status of the EDC,
The EDC. You
the
mean
Economic Development Committee?
Yeah, okay.
I mean, it's still a standing committee, but we haven't had a meeting in 3 years? Well, COVID, obviously, but
I know
probably
that
3 to
they-
4 years.
They canceled several meetings, like they got rid of the parking.
They
commission, park
They
committee.
canceled committees.
Yeah.
We supposed to have a meeting yesterday, EDC?
I didn't get notified.
No? Okay.
Makes sense.
So it's CIP and
Concom.
Concom. Bart, maybe you could
Yeah.
send out a list
I'll
of,
do a little list.
find
put
out
it
from
on there.
Steve, what are the
Yeah.
committees?
Yeah, we'll get that on the next agenda.
Do we have a rep to Stratford Regional? That doesn't have to be a planning board member, but it's
Yeah, I
either
think it's
planning
Steve
board or
right now.
somebody
Right, right.
in
I think it
town.
might,
Because
you
Peter
know,
did
we
it
do
even
have
when he
someone
wasn't on the board.
actually
Peter
right
did.
now.
Yeah. He stayed on. He
Okay.
was the member from the board,
Right,
and
then
then
he
s-
stayed
and then he
on when he
stayed
was-
on. I don't think we've had a new board member on there.
Right. Alrighty. Excellent. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn? Oh, let me ask, does anybody have anything else they want to bring up? Any old, new business?
Just applied for a grant for the Riverfront Advisory Committee for Shonda Park. To look at the culverts, do a H&H or hydrologic study. Pleased to have the ability to apply for it, so
Cool.
we'll hear back hopefully this month if we accept it or not, so.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was there 2 months ago and it was flooded completely, so the benches were underwater actually. So, not the whole thing, but
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, I walked down there today, then it's trickling stream on one side and then, tide on the other, so it's varies dramatically. Yeah.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bart.
Do we get a
We'll
motion?
entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Anybody want to talk about that? No? Nope. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, motion passes. Thank you all. Nice to see everybody.